Hello. A few people asked about banishing and different banishing rituals that you can perform and the purpose of banishing, etc. And then somebody had a deeper question, and it wasn't banishing so much as clearing a space before a ritual as getting rid of really dark forces inside your house. But it's the same thing, pretty much. I want to do an entire separate video on banishing, but this is a particularly powerful banishing ritual that I've been doing for quite a while, since I got this book at least. It is Magick, Shamanism, and Taoism, the I Ching and Ritual and Meditation, in Ritual and Meditation. Highly recommended, not just because I got it because I was interested in the I Ching and I wanted to start incorporating it into my practices. And it has like the entire series of hexagrams towards the back. They're old Chinese forms, the archaic forms, the hexagram, and the new Chinese form. And then an explanation of what it is and what it means and all that good stuff. But I ended up actually being more drawn to the rest of the book because it's all about magical ritual, different devices that Asian cultures have used for, centuries, and all the things that I could take from that and apply to my own personal work. And it's, mostly Chinese, but there's also a lot of Japanese stuff in it too. And actually the banishing ritual that it uses in here is Japanese origin. So there's a lot of on myo-o techniques and different things like that from like Japanese magicians and all that. Buddhist texts and all there get all jumbled up and everything gets pushed together. Anyway, what I'm going to be talking about is the Form of Fudo. And it's a banishing ritual and purification, assuming the form of Fudo. And it has a thing in there, but I like this that I found on the internet better. Fudo, myo-o, is the central deity in all myo-o groupings. He is the personification of Dainichi Nyorai, the best known of the myo-o, who are venerated especially by the Shingon sect of Japanese esoteric Buddhism. Fudo converts anger into salvation. He has a furious, glaring face, as Fudo seeks to frighten people into accepting the teachings of Dainichi Buddha. He carries a kurikara, or a devil-subduing sword, in the right hand, representing wisdom cutting through ignorance. He holds a rope in the left hand to catch and bind up demons, often has a third eye in the forehead, all-seeing, and is often seated or standing on a rock because Fudo is immovable in his faith. His left eye is often closed and his teeth bite the upper lip alternatively. Fudo is shown with two fangs, one pointing upward and the other pointing downward. His aureole, the things surrounding him, is typically the flames of fire, which according to Buddhist lore represent the purification of the mind and the burning away of all material desires. So I just happened upon this banishing ritual because I was reading this book. But in reading this book, and I was already pretty far along in my channeling abilities, this being started to come into my awareness as I was performing the ritual, and it sort of took on a form of its own. It's not a form of its own, it's like he takes on your form and uses you to perform this banishing ritual, and the energy that comes through is like out of this world tremendous. I can channel this being, and it's just like this, just this weight, this grounding weight, and there's like a fury behind it sometimes, but sometimes it's not so bad. It's not like anger for no reason. It's like a divine anger. It's difficult to describe. And as the description that I just read said, he converts anger into salvation. So it's a really interesting being to work with, to say the least. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the steps and show you the mudras, and also a brief blurb, because I think this sums it up quite nicely on what banishing is for. It's also a form of personal purification, not just to clear your space, the space around you. And then I'm going to back my chair up and actually perform it. For me, it is different. I do not have a ritual bell, so that I cannot use that to invoke the deity. I invoke the deity in a certain way internally, and then I perform the different mudra combinations and continue on with it that way. And sometimes I'll actually use a wand instead of, you'll be using sword fingers in part of it, like this, held this way. And then this is all the way out here. So he draws his sword out and starts to cut through all of the bad energy around you, or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I'll use an actual wand in place of the sword fingers, and so it also adds to that way. Anyway, okay. Banishing and purification. Prior to any ritual or meditation, the temple must always be cleaned of intrusive forces that might seek to disrupt the magician's work. The area must be fortified as a sacred zone that will be receptive to and supportive of all magical efforts. Such a cleansing or banishing also acts as a purification for the magician's body-mind complex, thereby assisting the essential psychological transition from the mundane world to the mindset required in the theater of magic. I thought that was a nice little encapsulation of the purpose of banishing and purification. The following procedure is adapted from the traditional Fudo invocation and is eminently suitable as a preparatory rite. Can also be found useful in situations where rampaging psychic energies are bringing about a situation of poltergeist activity or some other kind of unwanted haunting. It is not necessary to be an actual Buddhist in order to carry out the rite successfully. The mudras are just as effective and meaningful to the Taoist or Tao Chen, provided the person can understand and assimilate the various gestures and their attendant processes of thought and emotion. Remember that simply mimicking the signs will not do the job for you. Every part of the procedure is essential, as is a proper respect for the deity and his sacred gestures. I will say one thing about this is, like, for me, I guess the way you can describe it is that when somebody does a series of gestures for a specific reason with a specific being in mind, it gets etched in the energetic currents of history. And every time you perform those mudras in the same sequence for the same reason, you're tapping into everybody else who has done it in the same vein. And so when I started to do this, it was very obvious, the energy was very obvious that I was tapping into something that was very purgative, calming, grounding, and very powerful. But I have a different take on most of these things, and I have a different style, and I have a different level or degree of openness when it comes to working with beings, and they will physically move my body around and all that kind of thing. And so it became its own animal, let's just say, so that I don't use a bell, I don't use a formal invocation at the same time. Sometimes I'll chant in the invocation in the languages of light, and I'll invoke the deity that way. Sometimes I'll just do it internally. And then it mentions this, that when you're doing the mudras to invoke the deity, you're actually trying to become the god. So for me, since I channel so much, that was a lot easier. I didn't have to think. I don't even visualize, because part of it you'll see it says visualize the picture of the deity in front of you, visualize his sword, visualize his rope, visualize the flames around him, visualize his fangs, his eyes, his anger, all that stuff to help you, really get in touch with the energy of the beings. I don't do that, because I just channel the being and it comes through and the energy is there and it makes me do things. So it's a different process for me as well. When I'm going to be reading, keep that in mind. And then when I perform it, realize that I'm sort of performing my own version of it, which tends to get a lot more raucous than most people performing it will probably experience, because if you're not really open to channel very strongly, you're going to be making the fists of anger, and this is one of the mudras, like this. And you're going to be, invoking the deity, trying to feel its energy and like letting it come through, and then you're going to go to the next one, which is just a step up like that, called the triangle of fire. And then you will be visualizing the flames around you, trying to become the god. Then you will move into the sword in its scabbard, I think it's called. I'm trying to go straight in so that it's held that way. And then you will raise this up this way, and this comes all the way out, and this is here. This is the sheath of the sword, and you're just resting the sheath on your head and then holding the sword out like this. And then you'll come back, and then you do it again. And then you come back, and then you do it again. And as you do this, you're imagining white light shooting out in all directions from the power of the sword and the power of the god, and it's cutting all the demons and binding them, and it's pushing out this energy into your space and clearing everything. And then what I usually find is that it also starts to work internally, so that you will feel all of a sudden yourself get very, it's this weird feeling of just like calmness and serenity, almost scary. It's so powerful it can get scary. That you're like, where did this piece come from? But gosh, what was my point? When I do it, it sort of moves in its own fashion, and so sometimes I'll start speaking in the languages of light as the being. I get very, the anger in it like starts welling up and getting real fierce and serious about all this whatever negative emotion, and that this space must be consecrated for the work that is about to occur. It's like this being is very serious. And so I just want to tell you that my performance of it is a little more personal, and you should not be trying for this at first. If you're not open to channel and beings don't come into you and physically move you around, then don't expect this to do the exact same thing it does to me when you perform it. That being said, it might. I don't know. Okay, so basically what you're going to do, I almost ran through all the steps right there. First, you're supposed to strike a bell 11 times. I do not have one. Then you make some formal, perhaps vocal, perhaps internal invocation of the god, whatever that may be. I just start here, and then I ask the god to cleanse the space around me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you form the fists of anger, which is like this, down, and at the knuckles right here, so it's like that. Seems more complicated than it is, and once you get used to it, it's not that bad. It's not that bad at all. And then you allow the being to come into your presence. I'll just read it. Visualize the image of Fudo in front of you. Include his sacred symbols and weapons held in the correct hands. Invest this image with life. See the flames flickering around him. When it is sufficiently real, invoke the god formally by word. Then you should endeavor to merge the image of Fudo with yourself. Identifying your being with his, become the god in your thoughts. Then make the mudra known as Fists of Anger. Concentrate on this idea as forcefully as possible as you make the gesture. Then you move from the Fists of Anger into the Triangle of Fire. Just pop these fingers up like that. And you're still in the same way with your hands. And then accompany the concentration with flames around you. See them grow in strength, and visualize the fire flickering around you, around the fingers that form the gesture. Then you form the sword in its scabbard, the left hand, blah blah blah. And then that's basically it. The sword is then drawn, the latter placed on your head. This signifies that you have recognized that there are potentially disruptive energies in the temple, and that you are preparing yourself to deal with them. Actually, the way it does it right here, it shows it like that. So that's another thing, is like mine, it comes all the way out here, and I use the sword fingers in a lot of my other work, and so that just seemed to be like a natural progression for me. It comes all the way out here, and it kind of burns, and sometimes it gets very fluid, and sometimes it'll move out this way, and sometimes it'll back here, and sometimes it'll be real slow. It depends on what energies are encroaching in your space. So, okay. Hopefully I'll be able to add music to this incredibly boring video later, and I will just go ahead and perform it for you and see what happens. Another thing that happens to me sometimes is when I'm invoking a being, my heels will raise up. You can't really see that, but yeah, heels raise up. So I'll get on my tiptoes because it's so powerful. Okay, so seems a little less dramatic without music for some reason. Yeah, okay, so that was it. Form of Fudo. But the other thing I want to impress is that this being is incredibly powerful, whether you are a Buddhist or not, and I am not a Buddhist, and amazing to work with. And at the very end, I put my hands in the prayer position, prayer mudra, and just thank the being for his help. You know, it's not like, oh, you don't want to piss him off because he's an angry guy or whatever, nothing like that. But it's just like, you know, I mean, these energy signatures, these beings exist for a reason and they assist us for a reason. And so you should thank them for that, at the very least. But yeah, incredibly powerful being to work with, Fudo, myo-o, and I can't exactly explain. That was an abbreviated version, obviously. I would do that for a little longer, and I was just trying to get the most intensity out of it at once. I wasn't trying, but you know what I mean. Trying to encapsulate the purpose of the ritual in a couple sequences. I will spend more time with it when I'm doing it personally, obviously. And it is really almost scary. Keep saying that at the very end, when you're thanking this being, it's like I want to cry sometimes because of the peace that you feel physically, physical peace. It's disturbing, you know, because it's disturbing that you're not like that all the time. And then when you feel this physical peace come over your mind and your body, and it's a physical energy that is tangible, you can feel it. You're like, you know, why am I not doing this every day or something like that, you know? So yeah, incredibly powerful being to work with, and I hope you enjoyed this video.